it's not what I'd call a terribly crowded field, but you have a number of people who've already filed, and they're going to be on the Republican line on the ballot next year for governor in Idaho, the primary coming up in May. Really, only three of those names right now are of any consequence, and if the governor gets involved, that will be four, and the others are just sort of probably people who like to see their name on the line. But we have one of those candidates who's among the best known joining us this morning, and that's Ammon Bundy. It is 5 minutes after 8 o'clock. We're at 38. Bill Colley on Magic Valley this morning on News Radio 96.1 FM, 1310 KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. And if you got a comment or question, we'll take those in a bit, but we want to get a couple of things out of the way first. And, of course, you can do the comments and questions by giving me a call at 208-736-0300. Put that away, and we'll try to do that a bit later. Or just send me a line. Drop me a line, comment or question on the app, if you've got the app on your smartphone, and I'll pass it along to the candidate, too, as well. First of all, Mr. Bundy, welcome back to the program.
Thank you for having me again, Bill. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Good morning.
Hey, we were talking off air, and we got kind of a chuckle out of a story I shared from Ed Humphreys, who was here yesterday. And Ed and I were talking off air, and Ed has mentioned that because the two of you are in this race, that he's managed to meet you at a few different locations. And he said, gee, he's kind of a really nice guy. And I thought, the reason that people come to that conclusion is because they've been conditioned by media, which gives this impression that you're somewhat of a monster. And then they end up meeting you, and it's like, this isn't the guy the media has portrayed. This is, we're talking off air that this really hurts the credibility of those reporters, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And what we're seeing, and I'm not surprised because I'm a family man, and I grew up on a ranch in southern Nevada. I have a business. I've got 6 kids, a wife, and I'm not much different from anybody else. But because of we were forced to stand, and I responded. Those with other agendas, the media, had to demonize me. And now what we're seeing is, because I'm going around all over the state and meeting with hundreds and hundreds of people, almost daily. And people are saying, well, wait a minute, this is not even close to what the media has been telling us. And then they get upset because the media lied to them. And then they become avid supporters, and they get their friends involved. And it's exactly what we planned and what we knew would happen. And the media is the one that, did it to themselves. So they're just doing nothing but helping me by spewing lies.
Well, we talked about this the last time you were here, that because your name is so well known. Your name is known across the country and maybe worldwide. People see a photograph of you and they know exactly who that is. And I joked, I said either infamous or famous. But that's the point.
Yeah.
The media built this reputation for you, and if you play this right, you can turn that around quite easily on them.
Yeah, I just last week I had a media group from Norway that came to my home. They flew all the way from Norway, came here, interviewed me. I've had people from India, Australia, several places in Europe, and that have come actually either to one of our events or to my home specifically to interview. And then, of course, all over other states, and then, of course, here in Idaho. And I've even had to kind of back down and say, hey, if they're not from Idaho, we need to probably not schedule them, because we're focusing on the people of Idaho, and that's what's happening here. So, yeah, the media has, for whatever reason, has given me a name, and that's one of the reasons why I felt I would use that name to help the people of Idaho, because people know who I am.
You referenced something here, and I think that it's important to note that in California, one of the reasons that recall didn't succeed, I read last week, was that Larry Elder spent all of his time talking to national media and not enough time in California actually trying to campaign. And he got a lot of calls from Fox News, so he went on Fox News and talked a lot, but that wasn't the voting public. And so that's true. You have people who are going to be coming here just out of curiosity from all over the world, but really they don't have a vote in Idaho.
Yeah, and I'm running a statewide campaign to become the governor of Idaho, and that is my focus. And I must not be unwise and let myself get distracted. And I've already had, I mean, I don't need to speak to the media much more. I've had media knocking on my door for the last almost 7 years. And so, what we've been doing, I've been doing meet and greets and town halls all over. I've driven on the state 1.5 times already. I've put several thousand miles on my campaign RV already, and and we're going to meeting with 50, 60 people at a time, and it's working. I mean, I'm able to just talk to them, answer their questions. We're able to have a discussion, and people can see that I sincerely am in it for the right reason. And not only that, is that I have answers to questions that they have and concerns that they have that are truly going to affect our future here in Idaho.
Out of the top four, I assume that the governor is going to be making an announcement probably late this year. But out of the top four, this is just my opinion, and maybe you can comment on this. But I have the impression that a lot of people who follow him, they do it simply because, well, they always follow the Republican establishment candidate. And then I think in Ed's case, Ed still has to introduce himself to a lot of people because he's still got a name recognition hurdle. But among you and McGeehan, the two of you already have a really strong supportive base, and it's not going to be shaken. The people who come out for your events are the type of people who are going to be there still come next May. And so therefore, I think that if out of those four big names in this campaign so far, at least there's an advantage in that, in the sense that that those people you see are likely going to show up, rain or shine, come primary day.
Yeah, they're our base, and then of course we have to do a good job about communicating and also educating those that would come our way and identifying those that would come our way, and we hope to do that. At our event on the 18th, we had a Vote to Keep Idaho rally, kind of / concert, and that's where I registered to vote. We had a great crowd. There was several hundred people there, and the MC asked, well, how many of you here have not heard Ammon speak before? And about 40% of the people raised their hand. And so it's working. We're reaching people. We're getting people to come to these events and to these meet and greets and town halls that come because they were curious and wanted to hear, and they're not the same echo chambers that we've been living in for the last few years, and that's so that was encouraging to me.
If anyone's just tuning in, we're spending some time this morning with Ammon Bundy. He's a candidate for governor in Idaho. He's going to be on the Republican line in next year's primary. It's 8:13. We're at 40. Bill Colley on Magic Valley this morning on News Radio 96.1 FM, 1310 KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. You were mentioning earlier that you've been looking over some polling data, and I would imagine that's shifting quite a bit still, and we probably won't get a real good read on that until sometime in the spring. How does it look, though, for you at this point?
Well, again, you have to be careful because polls are just snapshots in time, and also they can be specific for certain groups. We've done, there was a poll by a national polling company that had me ahead of Janice McGeehan and gaining on Brad Little. And then there was another one that was definitely in the conservative world, and it had me over double Janice McGeehan, and then Janice was over double Brad Little. And of course, that was in a conservative on a conservative platform. But these are independent polls, and they are polling people that are active in political activity here in Idaho, and so it's very, very encouraging.
Does this large field, that's another part of this, because when she was elected lieutenant governor, that was in a field of, well, I say elected, obviously the primary, once you get through the primary in Idaho, I think most people realize that you don't usually face a lot of opposition from Democrats, but she was in a 5-person race, and So it was a plurality. Does that benefit someone like you that you're going to have so many names because we'll be probably at 8 or 9 by the time we get to primary day.
I don't. It could benefit me. We could say that it would split, an opponent's voter base. It could go both ways. I think more, and then again, this year is going to be a lot different than 2018. But one thing that we do learn from, and there's many things that we can draw from that, but that Janice McGeehan barely won in a five-way race. And so we start to look like, well, who were those candidates? Who would their voting base be? And when we look at that, we get very encouraged as well. And the same with Brad Little. It was a three-way race. Brad Little barely won over Raul Labrador. And Tommy Alquist was in the race, and everybody wants to say, well, the reason why Raul lost is because of Tommy Alquist. But the reality is it looks like maybe Tommy split Brad Little's vote. And so these are all things that have to be weighed and balanced and understood and calculated in running a statewide campaign for governor, and we're certainly doing that. And many things look, really good for us. And then on the other hand, we see what we have to do very specifically in order to win the Republican nomination in May.
Now, we talked about how media has driven this, but, there's probably, they use a phrase, high negatives, and you've had some of those. And again, that's media coverage, a lot to deal with that. But after what happened here at the rise of this pandemic in 2020, are you finding that Brad Little has a lot of high negatives with Republicans that you meet?
Yeah, it's it's a really interesting year in politics, and Brad Little has to try to sell and keep selling that he saved Idaho, that his actions were correct, that he was justified and had authority to shut down churches and to shut down businesses and to stop travel, and he has to sell that, and I don't know that it's an easy sell. I think people did not appreciate those actions. I don't think they were genuine, and the reality of them is people in Idaho, I believe and hope that they love freedom enough to say, look, it's not the governor's authority to shut down churches. I mean, have you ever read the First Amendment? It's not the government's authority to shut our businesses down. That belongs to us, not him. And but he's going to try to sell that he saved Idaho, and that's really the only thing that he can run on in order to be elected again.
Got about a minute before the break, and before we get there, I'll ask you about your website, because I know that if people want some real depth, you've got a lot of things posted there. What should they do if they want to look at that?
Yeah, so it's votebundy.com. I would if you go into the news section, we're putting a lot of the articles together. And then, of course, there's specific videos all over the website where I go into, a lot of detail on my points. And then, probably as important as anything, go to the Keep Idaho plan and read it. It's, it's 20-something pages, but read it, understand it, see that I'm standing on correct principles, and see that the solutions are actually freeing people up, not restricting them further with government burden.
I want to mention we've got more with Ammon Bundy coming up in just a couple of minutes after the break. We'll pick this conversation up again. We're at 38. It's about 19 minutes after 8 o'clock, and Bill Colley with you as well on Magic Valley this morning on News Radio 96.1 FM, 1310 KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. And if I could mention quickly, tomorrow morning on the program, Steve Millington, Twin Falls County Republican Party Chairman, joins us at 7 o'clock. We have Twin Falls County Sheriff's Office at 8:30. And at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, it's past. Got a conversation this morning going on with Ammon Bundy. He is a candidate for governor in Idaho, running as a Republican or on the Republican line. That primary is coming up next May. We're at 824. It is a bit of a crowded field, and we're at 40. Bill Colley on Magic Valley this morning on News Radio 96.1 FM, 1310 KLIX, and News Radio 1310.com. The candidate told me something in the break that really got me thinking. And he pointed out that when Governor Little took all of this COVID money from Washington, and that really makes him beholden to the Biden White House. There's an old line: if you take Caesar's coin, then Caesar's pretty much going to dictate to you how you use that and some of the rules and regulations. And I think that's a good point that you make, and it really says that Governor Little, when I think about him challenging this new mandate where Biden wants to force vaccines on people, does that could, I didn't think about it this way, but that could have an impact on a case like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely can. He took billions of dollars from the federal government. He took it into the governor's office. He didn't put it into the normal coffers of the state where the legislature decides where those funds go. He took it to his office, the governor's office. He created a committee that served at his pleasure. This is according to his own executive order. If you go to 2020-07, Executive Order 2020-07, he says that these people serve at my pleasure, and they decide where the funds go. Well, in order to get those funds, he would have had to sign a memorandum of understanding, MOU, and the federal government would have, and did, not just would have, they did require him to receive or to do certain things to receive that money, and those things are COVID mandates. Those things are masks. Those things are vaccines, pushing vaccines. And he received that money and agreed to that. And he is beholden to that. And somehow he's going to have to run an election in that environment and do what he said he was going to do with the federal, when he took federal money, and still somehow keep the people from not being against him when he pushes these mandates. And I mean, he's put himself in a situation where he cannot truly serve the people of Idaho.
I went to my mailbox last Saturday, and there was my rebate check there. And of course, unlike my previous tax returns, it doesn't come in electronically. It came in a letter form, so there could be a statement there that said, "Hey, thank Brad Little for this money." It seems to me that that's a way to try to buy votes. Would that be your impression too?
Absolutely. And it's so disingenuous. And I hope the people of Idaho don't fall for this. I mean, he received, upwards to $18 billion from the federal government. There's so much money now that they don't even know what to do with it, that they said that there's a surplus in the state of Idaho, and so now they're buying votes by giving money back. How could we have a surplus? I mean, just logically, anybody that has any fiscal idea, that has a belief in fiscal responsibility, how can we go through a year like 2020, even 2021, where businesses were locked down, travel was restricted, supply lines were completely disrupted. Even today, we can't get supplies that we normally could get. And then say that it was the best year we ever had. It just doesn't. It doesn't make sense, and it's not right. And Brad Little is using this money that he has received from the federal government to make people believe that Idaho is in a strong economic position, and therefore they should vote for him again.
Got about another minute before the break. You referenced the supply chains, and I'll share a little interesting story here. And at this time of year, my hands start to crack because of the changes in the weather, and I've always been a fan of Neutrogena hand cream because it really helps out. I had to go to 4 different stores to find it, and when I finally got to the 4th store, it was the only tube of it on the counter. And when you start seeing things like that, I've seen it with cat food. I've seen it with the toilet paper in the beginning. It seems there's no end to this, but you're spot on that we're dealing with a situation here that crisis could go on for years.
Yeah, they caused it. You might, was it justifiable or not? I don't believe it was, but they caused it. and then by printing more money or collecting more taxes, they think that they can recover from this and not have political pushback or ramifications. And we're just seeing the beginning of this. These are the effects of socialism. That's what socialism is. Socialism is the control of the means of production, and that's what we're seeing. And because of Brad Little controlled the means of production in Idaho, and other governments controlled the means of production in other countries and other states, we have a supply issue, and our supply chain has been disrupted, and we have only seen the beginning of the disruption. And somehow they want to help us to believe that what they did was okay.
You can stick around for another half hour, right?
I sure can.
We'll do that. We'll talk more with Ammon Bundy coming up. Candidate, he's running as a Republican on the Republican Party line. That's the primary coming up in May of 2020. We're at 8:30. It's 39. Bill Colley on Magic Valley this morning. On News Radio 96.1 FM, 1310 KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. From Twin Falls chimes in on the app and says that the governor hasn't announced his re-election bid yet because Rachel Maddow hasn't told him to. Remember, the orders came down in 2020 after she scolded him on air last year. 8:34, it's 39. Ammon Bundy joining us this morning. Ammon Bundy would like to succeed Brad Little as governor of Idaho, and his name will appear on the primary ballot next May for the Republican Party. It's 8:34, we're at 39. Bill Colley again on News Radio 96.1 FM, 1310 KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Hey, we were talking during the break about what's going on in Texas right now with that border situation, which will impact every state in the union. But Greg Abbott looks like he's finally, it's dawned on him that he can protect his own borders and he doesn't need the federal government to do that. And if that happens and that works, it would set a template, and it backs up a lot of the things that you've been saying over the course of the last 7 or 8 years, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to, a delegation of authority or power. We, the people of the United States, of the states, we're the ones that are the sovereign. We decided that many, many years ago in the 1700s, and all the powers of government come from us, of the people. And the powers of the federal government come from the states. And if the federal government is not going to protect a state, then the state has a right to protect itself. Just like if the state's not going to protect a person, then the person has a right to protect themselves. And certainly I've seen that in my life. I saw that with my family. I saw it where the county and the state and the federal government had turned their eyes and their targets towards my family. The state should have stood up and protected my family. They didn't. The county should have stood up, protect my family. They didn't. And so they left it to us to have to try to defend ourselves. And thankfully, patriots from all over come and stood with us. And so, yeah, this idea that somehow a state doesn't have authority to defend itself when the federal government won't do it, even though by agreement the federal government is supposed to, that's an idea that we have to continue to entertain. And Greg Abbott there in Texas, he has understood that it is his role to protect the people of his state, and he's going to do it if the federal government chooses not to.
Got a note from a writer who asks, what do you think of Scott Bedke?
Well, I'll try to say nice words here on the air because he's not an honest person. I watched him lie to a jury under oath in an Idaho district court, and that was enough for me. I mean, flat out lie when other legislatures testified in the same hearing, just exactly opposite. In fact, 10 different people testified exact opposite, and Bedke, in order to push a political agenda, lied and to try to get the jury to decide something that wasn't factual. And I've also seen the way that he works with the legislature. It's a terrible way to try to get things done. But all in all, Scott Bedke is just not a good leader. He has not led and unified the legislature. He has divided it. He has not brought in conservative ideas and further the Republican platform. And so that's, that is about as nice as I can say my opinion of Scott Bedke, Speaker of the House.
Got about a minute and a half before the next break. Are you still scheduled? You still have a rally scheduled in Nampa coming up in a few days.
It's a town hall meet and greet. Absolutely.
Is that Saturday?
Hang on one sec. My schedule is really packed, so I'm going to go to my calendar because I don't want to get it wrong.
It's probably on the
and,
website.
We literally are meeting people every day.
Yeah.
And so in Nampa is on the 28th.
Okay.
We'll be doing a meet and greet on the 28th, and then Caldwell on the 29th. And if people go to my calendar on votebundy.com, they can follow me and see that, almost every night we're meeting with people.
And there's likely a contribution button there too, because I'm sure that most of your contributors are going to be regular people and not the big agribusinesses and the like.
Yeah, in fact, that's intentional. We, going into this, knew that if we could get enough people to donate, even if they donate just $20 a month for the next 12 months, if we can get enough people to do that, we can run a solid campaign and do what we need to do without special interest or large PACs that have agendas donating to us.
We got more coming up with Ammon Bundy. He's a candidate for governor in Idaho. His name will appear on the Republican Party ballot coming in the primary next May. We're almost 8:40. It's 38. Bill Colley. I'm on News Radio 96.1 FM, 1310 KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. And of course, if you want, drop me a line on the app or give us a shout in the last 15 minutes or so of our conversation. That number 208-736-0300. But first, a short break ahead. Time this morning with Ammon Bundy on News Radio 96.1 FM, 1310 KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. And Mr. Bundy is one of the candidates who was announced and filed to run on the Republican line in next year's primary for governor. It's 8:44. We're at 39. Bill Colley with you, too, on Magic Valley this morning. And if you've got a comment or question for the candidate, that's 208-736-0300. He's with us for a few more minutes. And then we've got the app function. Of course, if you've got the app on your smartphone, you can send me a comment or question, and I will try to pass that along, too. But right off the top, I've got a quick question for you because it's become somewhat of it's been buried at least the last several months, but it's going to become a big issue again, I'm sure, when the legislature reconvenes. We have a property tax crisis, and we really have an affordability crisis, too, when it comes to housing in Idaho. Any thoughts on how we could crack that one and try to solve that?
Yeah, so, our affordable housing crisis is caused because of supply and demand. And what we're doing is more people are moving in than we have land for development. So we are now building on our agricultural land, which is our number one industry. So we're actually destroying our number one industry in Idaho because of housing, and we don't have enough land. And yet we have 63% of the land in Idaho is controlled by the federal government. And I plan on taking on that battle. I plan on getting the lands and the resources back into the hands of the people of Idaho so that people of Idaho can benefit from it, so we can save our number one industry, so we can fill the supply of land practically and lower this affordable housing crisis. Also with when it comes to property tax, our houses have increased 73% in the last 5 years in value, or if you want to call it value, in price anyway. And my proposal is eliminating property tax altogether. It's an immoral tax. It makes it so you don't own your home, and you can't have private property and property tax in the same category. You either have one or you have the other. And I plan on replacing property tax with consumption tax that more than pays for the needs of legitimate government. And that way, when you pay off your home, you own your home. And none of this, increase and control. If we're not careful, we'll end up being like other states, such as New Jersey, where people are paying $12,000 to $15,000 a year for just a normal average home, and I'm talking about $12,000 to $15,000 a year in property tax, and it's something that we have to do in Idaho to make sure that we remain free and we remain in control of our property.
Yeah, it was mentioned to me one time way back, 25 years or so ago. I was talking to a candidate who was a libertarian, and he was one of the few in New York State at the time. And he used to refer to property tax as just land rent, essentially saying you don't really own your property if you're constantly having to shell out money for it every year.
Well, property tax is a Marxist idea, but we've grabbed onto it, and it's been a way that government's been able to grow and even legitimate government to be able to pay for the needs of the government. But there's better ways, much better ways. Consumption tax is a better way, and we can pay for the legitimate purposes of government and still own our homes and not have the government always controlling our homes, even if we paid off our mortgage. Hundreds of people every week in Idaho lose their homes to the state because they can't pay the property tax, and it's usually the elderly, the disabled, those who lose their jobs. This is something that really happens in Idaho.
We were talking earlier about the rally coming up, or some of the get to meet and greets you've got going on. A couple of those in Canyon County, and you mentioned you're going to be doing some traveling in the next few months. But I thought I saw an email blast from you yesterday where you said that some of the events you're going to try to move them into next year, so it's more of a sprint toward primary day than a marathon. So you'll be focusing your efforts, I guess, elsewhere in the fall and winter before you really try to do that like full court press at the end. Am I reading that right?
Yeah. So we had these Keep Idaho rallies. They were really high production events, and we were planning on getting 1,000+ people there, and we decided to move them to closer to the primaries after the legislative session. And the real reason why is because our meet and greets and our town halls have been so effective, and we just felt like we should take all the resources that we were going to put into having these Keep Idaho rallies, push them until next year, and then just keep doing these meet and greets where we're meeting with 60, 70, 80 people at a time, and then these town halls where we're meeting with 100, 200, 300 people at a time. And we're just going to keep doing that, almost every night of every week until we're into 2022. And then of course, everything kind of escalates, and we'll start having these bigger rallies and so forth. And so anybody who wants to have a meet and greet with us, just contact us, contact my campaign manager, and we will schedule that in your area. It can be something big or something small. It can be something private. It can be something that we help you promote. But this is what we're going to be doing because it's working.
I was talking to one of your more gentlemanly opponents yesterday, and that would be Ed Humphreys. And Ed and I were talking off air, and he got commenting about. He said we really need prayers for a snowy winter this year, because if we have to go through another year like we've just gone through, that we're going to be in some serious issues when it comes to the drought. And I know that we probably would be living under restrictions and the like. When I hear that, I realize these things are cyclical. But if you were in the office as governor going into 2023 and you're faced with that ongoing situation, what can you do? Is there a solution that's possible to try to find other ways to? We definitely water crops. You just pointed out our number one industry.
Well, one thing, because I've been involved in the Klamath Falls battle there, Southern Oregon, it's pretty intense over there, and I just want people to understand when it comes to water rights, they've been adjudicated very, very specifically with first priority, second priority, third priorities, and this was established 200 years ago, and it works. We've been through many droughts, we've been through many dry spells, and if we just stick to the way that they were adjudicated, the way that the law sets forth, then we will get through it without major conflict. We don't need the government restricting us. The adjudication of the waters is already established. And we especially don't need, and there is no authority for the federal government to come in and to control these waters and can control our access. And that should not happen. And as a governor, I will make sure that the laws of Idaho, when it comes to water rights, when it comes to priorities, when it comes to the adjudications, will be followed. And the federal government will not come in and try to create something different so that a minnow can have more water than a farmer. And that just is not going to happen.
Well, you mentioned that. I was just thinking, I've had a lot of email traffic over the last several months about Mike Simpson's proposal to remove those 4 lower Snake River dams. I don't know what he's attempting. Maybe he's getting some sort of an award from the environmentalists, but it seems to me that I don't think that's ever going to happen. But I worry. And what do you think would be the results if that did come to pass?
It would destroy Idaho. I mean, it would destroy an immense amount of wildlife, immense amount of agriculture, immense amount of recreation, and it would destroy Idaho. And Mike Simpson, him following this extreme environmentalist agenda and falling for, if he is or if he's just part of it, but falling for this idea that humans are destructive and therefore they have to be stopped and dams have to be removed. We in Idaho have to completely reject that idea, completely reject that extreme environmentalist notion. Not that we always need to take care of our land and resources, but the Bible teaches us that we need to use our land, that God made the earth for us. And these extreme environmentalists don't believe that. They think humans are an invasive species.
Yeah, I think that the goal would be just to get us completely off the land. And I think that, well, you're no stranger to that. I mean, obviously you saw it back in 2013 or so. But it does seem that the idea is if they can move us out of here and maybe put us all in high rises in Oakland and San Francisco and Portland, that they can just themselves, the limousine liberals, come here and do their ski vacations without anyone in their way. I just get the impression that when you mentioned that they look at us as being invasive species, that right now the people who are in control look at us just mainly as weeds, and that we need to be controlled. And I don't know where it ends, but people have to start voting their own, call it, interests, and I don't know that always happens. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, in fact, there's a major disconnect, and we see it in many of the polls that we're running, where we do a poll or an organization like Idaho Freedom Foundation runs a poll where they say, "Would you support the removal of dams?" And they're in like the pushing 90% people saying no. And then those very same people voting for Mike Simpson. And so we have to become more aware in Idaho of who we are electing. We have to become more aware about what we are supporting. Just because he has an R next to his name doesn't mean he's a good person. Doesn't mean that his platform and what he's doing is good. And we have to, get out of this idea that if it has an R next to the name, we're okay. And if we don't do that, we will see things like dams removed in Idaho. We will see things like welfare overcome our economy here in Idaho, and we will see Idaho become another Washington, Oregon, California, New Mexico, Nevada, Colorado. That's what Idaho will become if we do not correct this disconnect that we have between those that we elect and what they are doing.
Hey, you got about a minute and a half to go. Anything you wanted to close on, and just maybe something you wanted to remind people about, or just a thought that popped into your head?
Well, just again, we are traveling all over the state. I would love to meet with you and your friends. I encourage you to go to votebundy.com, contact us for meet and greets if you want to put a town hall together. This is what we're doing, and I will talk to you and your friends about the specifics of what are happening here in Idaho, and then you will be able to make an informed decision of whether I'm a good candidate or not.
And again, if they wanted to go to the web, what's the address?
VoteBundy.com. VoteBundy.com.
One of these days, we've got to get you in studio too, as well. So when you make it to this part of the state, that would be great, and we might be able to set up a good long stretch of time and just have people do a firing line where they can call in and whatever they've got on their minds, they can run by you.
I would love that. I would love that. We should schedule it, and I'll just come out.
Yeah, we could do that probably, I think, October, November. Trust me, we'll have plenty of time. So,
I agree.
All right. Well, Mr. Bundy, thank you much for your time again today.
Well, thank you for having me, Bill. It's always a pleasure.
All right. Thank you. Have a great week, too.
You too. Don't work too hard.
Never. All right. Thank you. I want to thank Ammon Bundy for joining us this morning on Magic Valley this morning on News Radio 96.1 FM, 1310 KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. That last line, he was asking me off air. He said, how long have you been getting up at 2 a.m.? And I had to do a little thinking about that because when we expanded the show, I think it was 3, maybe 4 years ago. It's hard to believe it's been that long, but I went from getting up at 4:30 in the morning to getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning to do this. And but you can adjust your day. And he has a background growing up on a ranch. We're getting up early, long before sunrise. He's not a stranger to that at all. I got a break coming up in just a few seconds. I do want to point out tomorrow morning, we have Steve Millington joining us. He's the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party Committee. Also tomorrow morning at 8:30, we've got Twin Falls County Sheriff's Office. And at 9 o'clock tomorrow, Pastors Roundtable. And Friday, the Gun Guys will be joining us. Forrest Anderson from Washington Street Pawn and Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense. And they'll be talking all things firearms and taking your comments and questions, too.